everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Clint, thank you so much for being here today, my friend. I am so happy that you're taking this time to share your knowledge with all of us. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you, Sifu, for having me on. I've been looking forward to this call for a long time. We talked a little while back, and my youngest son is a first-degree black belt in martial arts, and he's been fortunate enough to where his master in Taekwondo is now a Sifu in Wing Chun, and so we're getting to do both of those. And so I love that you've combined, your love for martial arts with your coaching and everything else, and I love it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. But you know what? When we think about it as a martial arts instructor, we actually, and I'm going to say this for all martial arts instructors, every one of us is a therapist as well.
100%. Yeah, there's no question about it. Yeah.
I mean, we don't have the title, but
right.
Everybody comes with their issues, their problems, their situations. Sometimes you hear about divorce. Sometimes you hear about their children. Sometimes you're helping the children who are having trouble in school or they're being bullied. There's so many situations that a great martial artist has to start to fully listen to their clients, right?
Oh, I totally agree. I think part of that is you guys are engaging on a physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual level. There's nothing untouched. So I think that trust that you build really goes a long way, and then being open to that, and then you end up involved in every part of their life. I think it's amazing. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, listen, I've been doing martial arts for 47 years, but it feels like I just started yesterday.
I think that's how you're supposed to feel, right?
It does. And you know what? And people this is a question I get asked a lot. Aren't you tired of teaching white belts? I'm like, no, I'm excited. I am so excited to teach somebody new and to help them embark on a journey that will change their lives if they stick with it.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah, for sure. It's fun to watch the white belts. I love it.
Oh yeah. So let's get into who Clint is. Let's go way back, Clint. I mean, way back when you were, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, one of those years, and what you recall that maybe now you go, I didn't think of it, but that really made an impact on me.
Yeah. Gosh, the way I like to tell my story, when we say go way back, fortunately, I only have to go back to the mid 60s. So we're not going back too far. But I was born and raised in Southern California. And what I remember about that was it just really was a great experience. We were probably, lower middle class as far as an economic status, but, we had a pool in our backyard. I could go outside. You didn't have to worry about, you could always come home even after dark and never had to worry about anything. And I was involved in football and baseball and things like that. And I just remember my young life being a lot of fun, and just enjoying life. But then, there was, Sifu, a thing that happened when I was about 11 or 12 that it's not that I look back today and go, wow, that really had an impact. But honestly, it's only been in recent years. I'm 57 now. It's only been in recent years that I've really recognized just how much of an impact that season had on me. And so in short, what happened, my parents had me very late. And so by the time I was 11 years old, they'd already been married over 25 years. and everything seemed good. I mean, I would see them get in fights, stuff would happen, but nothing that at that age I considered to be out of the ordinary.
Right.
And then one day I ended up finding out that my dad ended up having an affair, which ended up leading to him actually moving out and moving in with this other lady who had a son that was a couple years older than me, which was certainly awkward. And I'm not an only child. I actually have an older brother, but my older brother's almost 8 years older.
Mm.
So by that season of my life, he had actually already moved out, lived 8-9 hours away. So for all intent purposes, I was alone. And that ended up leading to some really rough circumstances. My mom, who was not, I mean, they drank casually, but I wouldn't have called her a heavy drinker leading up to that, but she really didn't know how to cope. And so she started drinking really heavy, suffered from suicidal ideation this was about a 2-year period of my life. Tried committing suicide a few different times with pills, but the scariest were one time we were in a car and she had been drinking. Of course, I was 11, so I had to let her drive. And we were driving down this windy road where I grew up in LA that is quite dangerous. People would, probably once a year, you'd hear about a fatal accident at least.
Right.
And we spun out at about 65 miles an hour and just avoided hitting some trees. And, and she was trying to take us both out. She was screaming, I'm done. I'm done. We're just going to end it. It was just crazy time. And then later on with a handgun, she was going to take her life. And my dad and I jumped on top of her, on top of the gun, and just yelled for her to, please stop, that kind of thing. And so, at that time, you just react as a kid. So I didn't really understand what kind of an emotional impact, what kind of trauma was actually occurring to me. And so ultimately, it only lasted a couple of years for my parents. They ended up reconciling. There were some other crazy things. We moved from Southern California to literally out in the middle of nowhere, Montana. I went from being a city kid to living on 20 acres on the Bitterroot River in southern Montana. And that lasted like 3 months. My dad ended up actually leaving us there, and we flew back after selling the house one day. I mean, it was a crazy, crazy season. So the reason why I bring that story up, it was shortly after that I began to abuse alcohol and drugs.
Gotcha.
And, honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that I was at that level, a successful athlete and enjoyed it, I don't know just how deep I would have dove into that lifestyle, but that's when it began. And so, years later, as other things in life began to occur and I began to make even worse choices, got into really heavy drugs in my 20s, did meth for 9 years. When I got into those stages of my life, it was really only after I had a major breakthrough and began to realize it. And actually, even though I wasn't being coached formally one-on-one, I had joined a network marketing company at the time. And so we received a lot of coaching through workshops and stuff like that. It was only during that season I began to look back and realize just how much of not even a scar, but an open wound was there that was leading me to certain mindsets and behaviors.
Crazy. I heard the drug addiction. I heard all this stuff. But what really punched me was the meth.
Yeah.
Wow. And for you to come out of that, that's insane. That's insane. And the fact that you came out of it and you 9 years. That's what I heard. 9 years, meth.
Yeah.
That just really branded me in thinking, my God, how on earth? First of all, I've never really done drugs. So besides, have a drink or something, and I'm not even a heavy drinker. You can call me the wuss of drinking because if it has a little umbrella, I might like it.
That's funny.
So I'm not a heavy drinker. I literally have a bar in my house, and I'm afraid to sometimes offer it to somebody who comes over because I'm like, oh man, that liquor is going to be bad. It doesn't get
stale. Yeah, right.
So it's like, I wonder if that wine is any good. And people who don't know me for the holidays and stuff like that will buy me red wine and liquor. I'm like, oh, I'm very appreciative of it.
That's right.
But they don't know me enough to realize that that's going to sit on my shelf. So sometimes what I do is I go, I'm going to somebody's house and I don't have time to stop. Which is the latest wine that I have, so I can at least share it with
Right.
somebody, right?
Absolutely.
So remember, sometimes it's just knowing somebody before you go ahead and make that kind of gift, right? Because what if I was a recovering alcoholic and people just give me that without realizing it?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
So sometimes it's just taking that minute to just find out about somebody, right? But when you said 9 years meth, I'm
Yeah.
like, man, something triggered you besides, everything else to go to that deep end. And then something had to trigger you to come out of it.
Right.
Because the other day I made a comment to somebody and I said, it was actually on Heroes Rising. And I said, and the guy was talking about being in a rut. And I said, yeah, if you dig a grave, which you did with the meth,
Mm-hmm.
you stay in that grave until you make a decision to climb out of it. Otherwise, you'll dig deeper and deeper and deeper. And one day you may not be able to come out of it, but you found a way out.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I want to know why you went that route. Was it a person? Was it everything that was going on with your parents? Or was it just like, just, I wanted to try something different. And then also I want to know how you got out of it. Because this is something for somebody to go an aha moment to understand why people do certain things. For me, habits are huge. And being that I try to teach people positive habits, it's also how do we get into negative ones? So the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah. Well, I think, first and foremost, with me starting just drug use in general,
Mm,
even though it was not quite as crazy as stuff like, amphetamines and barbiturates and stuff like that in my teen years, that kind of led me in a direction that I was willing to experiment with just about anything, which is not
mm,
something I'm proud of, but that was just
right.
kind of my personality at that time. And again, I didn't recognize that it was a coping mechanism. So
Mm,
my answer back then would have would have been simply to you, I just like to have fun. But I reckon, I mean, that's what my answer would have been. And
That's
I
what
remember
everybody's
saying
answer
that.
is.
Yeah. And I remember even saying that over the years. But it was only years later that, especially when I began to recognize and learn about the patterns that happen when you suffer trauma, and then when you
Mm,
initiate certain coping mechanisms, how they can get you stuck in a loop. And, then I began to look back and realize that a lot of what happened, during that season of my life had an impact.
mhm,
But ultimately, as far as, getting into meth, ultimately, I think how it happened was, so in short, I continued my athletic career. I'd blown out my knee my senior year of baseball. It was an awful situation. Really, really, hurt me personally. It was in the first inning of our first game. I was the starting shortstop, returning all-star. We had one of the best teams in Southern California. All these, hopes and dreams of what we were going to accomplish that year. And in the first inning, my season was over. So then I rehabbed, and a couple of years later, at about 1920, same thing happened. It was the seventh game of my sophomore year of junior college, and I blew out my knee even worse.
mm,
3 ligaments, cartilage, tendons, just a catastrophic knee injury. And this is like the mid 80s, 1986. So even surgeries back then weren't as productive at rehabbing you and that kind of thing. So that ended the only dreams I had at that stage of my life, which was I wanted to use that talent to get a scholarship to a bigger school, a 4-year university, and continue my education and continue my career. So when that happened, I didn't know what else to do. At that point, I was still smoking marijuana, things like that, but I wasn't doing meth or anything like that.
mhm,
And so I got into the car business at 21 years old. And that was primarily because at that point, I felt like I'm not motivated enough to continue my education without sports. I wish I could change that, but that's just who I was at that time.
right.
And so I want to make some money. I had a buddy that I knew that was making good money. So I got into that. And that's when I was actually exposed to meth. And I think, even when you start talking about meth, before I go too much further, I don't know if everyone watching this feels the same way I do, but usually you have this immediate prejudice or what you think that looks like, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so based on where I grew up and where I lived in Northern California for a number of years as well, which was when the mess started, that would have been some white guy with a whole bunch of tattoos, rotted out teeth, hanging out in the park, pushing a bike. I mean, that's what a meth head would have looked like to me.
Right.
But what I would soon discover through personal experience is it could look a lot different as well. So I was a professional salesperson. I had the shirt and tie and did my job and paid my bills and all that stuff. But meanwhile, me and several other guys would go into the bathroom, we'd snort crank and go back out. And, car business was crazy. You'd work roughly about 250 hours a week. So it was a pretty major, or not a week, I'm sorry, but 250 hours a month. It was a bell to bell kind of job. You go in at 8, you wouldn't leave until 8. And I think part of what would happen is we would be so excited about the weekend because once a month you get off on a Thursday night and you wouldn't have to be back until Monday. And that's when we would do it the most. And literally, Sifu, again, none of this stuff, I'm not proud of any of this stuff, but it was not uncommon to start partying on Friday and not even go to sleep until Sunday night because of the meth use. Yeah, many times.
Gosh.
And so I'm bringing that up because my first wake up call, it wasn't the one that caused me to make a decision yet, but it was my first wake up call that, okay, I thought this was like a secret part of my life and things are beginning to unravel. I'd actually taken a customer out on a test drive. He was driving, thank goodness. And, you're having this conversation. I'm probably talking about features, whatever, small talk. And then all of a sudden what happened is we're driving and I noticed the landmark that we had just passed because we had a very specific route. So it was the same route over and over and over.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I opened my eyes and we are a couple of miles down the road. So I was literally in the middle of saying something and just blacked out and then came back to. And I kind of looked over at him and it was really hard to tell. He was probably so focused on driving this new car and checking it out that he wasn't paying that close of attention. But I realized what had just happened. I mean, I had literally just blacked out on the guy. So you would think that would have been enough, but it wasn't. But it was a wake up call. I never forgot that. And it made me think, man, maybe this isn't such a good idea, but ultimately what I think led to it, the final decision was I got married. This is the late 90s. And in that marriage, we had done some meth together, but the use had really been reduced quite a bit. I wasn't doing it on a daily basis. It was just much more recreational, like a Friday night or a Saturday night instead of like during the week. And I remember, as you can imagine, any marriage that has meth in it was a train wreck.
Oh yeah.
And we both drank heavy. We both had lots of just baggage and hurts. And I'm just going to speak for me. I was verbally abusive. There were times where we got into shoving matches and, it was just an ugly, ugly scene. And I remember one night, for whatever reason, we decided, hey, let's go do it. So we did. We went out, we got some crank, we did our thing. And the next morning, this is exactly what happened. I woke up and I felt the physical side of the come down, right? I mean, I just didn't feel good. I felt like crud. But there was just something different that morning, Sifu. There was just something different. And I began to think about my life. And I just did not want to be that guy anymore. I didn't want, this. First of all, anybody who's ever experienced that knows that it's a very consuming thing, not just the use of it, but even acquiring it. There's times where you'll spend hours just sitting in a car in front of some place waiting for, is the DEA going to show up at any moment? You put yourself in stupid situations.
I'm sure.
And you'll spend hours waiting to get this drug just to go out and finally go to a party that you were supposed to be at hours before. But, it just it's stupid,
Wow.
And
Yeah, I
that
get you.
morning, I'm just like, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And so I call these courageous decisions in my
Mhm.
coaching business.
Right.
I just made a courageous decision that day that as far as meth goes, I'm done. That's it. And
Good for
and
you.
and that was it. And it really was it.
Yeah.
Cold turkey, and I want to be really sensitive to this because I know walking away from meth like that, cold turkey, is not common per se.
Mhm.
So what I want to be sensitive to is specifically if you're out there right now and this is an issue for you, it's okay to get help.
Oh, yeah.
You need to use any means necessary to get this demon out of your life.
Right.
But for me, I just made a courageous decision that day, and I was just fed up, and that was it.
Wow. That's beautiful that you found the way out. By the way, my good friend Dana Abbott, you can tell your son he was on here. He's known as the modern, are you ready? Modern samurai. He
Yeah.
is the number one guy in the country
Wow,
who teaches samurai swords. So, Dana,
that's
thank you
cool.
for joining us. And just let you know, your son know that we are in good company. He's a good friend of mine. So,
That is cool.
thinking that the fact that and you said it's okay to ask for help, and we need to let everybody know that as well. So basically, what you did is you saw the ladder and you climbed it, right, out of that
Yeah,
grave.
yeah,
But a lot of people, they'll see the ladder, they'll see the way out of it, and they'll go, nah, I'm not ready, or this is not for me, or I like
yeah,
being down where I am.
yeah.
Or they're thinking like, yeah, if I get out, I'll just be back tomorrow, right? So what you did is you climbed out, but then you sealed that grave again, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I completely agree with everything you just said. And I think you have to want something better for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's really, at the end of the day, the beginning of all new things, right? You have to
Right.
want something better for yourself. Other people can't
Always.
want it for you. Even when you talk about coaching, I only work with clients that I mean, we go through a 30-minute call first just to make sure we're a good fit. I mean, I won't
Mm-hmm.
even work with anybody anymore unless
Not
it's
worth it.
pretty obvious up front that they're ready to do the work for them.
Mm.
And so I think that was something, even though I didn't consciously recognize that's what was happening, that was a huge part of me being able to change that element of my life. Because I should point out, during that season, you had asked me, was there one thing or what led up to it? And I really believe there wasn't one thing. It was
Mm.
really kind of a variety of things that were going on in my life at that time.
Right, right.
And so part of that was I'd gotten involved with this network marketing nutritional company. I think I mentioned a little bit ago. And so what happened was I started going to these workshops and meetings and even weekend, events that they were putting on and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a lot of mindset and the way you think. And that was new for me.
Mm.
I had never experienced anything like that up to that point in my life. And so that it was during that season that for the first time I began to realize, wow, I don't have to be a victim to all the bad choices and all the stupid things that I've done and this reputation, that I've built of being
Right.
average and mediocre. I really can be
Mm.
someone great. I really can do something great. I really can influence people. And it was even, it's funny. I'd be curious if this was true for you at a younger age, because obviously, I've been in coaching and mentoring, and I was a pastor for 17 years, helping people through that method. I've been doing that for a very long time, but it was even during that season, even when I was doing drugs, that I began to realize that that's what I love to do. I loved to help people. I love to help them work through issues.
Mm.
Now, I was not full of wisdom in those days, so I had limitations as to, how much I could help somebody.
Right.
But I seriously even remember doing meth one night and drinking and there was a party going on, and everybody left but this one girl, and her husband was actually one of the ones that left. They went to go get more booze, and she stayed behind. And so it's just the two of us, and we're just talking. And next thing I know, she starts to let me know about just different challenges that she had in her life. And she ends up exposing that she goes, I was raped when I was, I think, a teenager. And she's telling me all this stuff. She goes, I can't believe I'm telling you this. My husband doesn't even know this stuff. I've
Oh my
never told
gosh.
anybody.
Uh,
And things like that happened a lot.
mm,
People would just open up to me, even at a young age. And so all of those things were happening at the same time too. It's just, I wanted to be able to help people, but I didn't realize until my mindset started changing and until I wanted something better for myself,
mm,
that there was so much more to life. And I think that was a huge key to
yeah.
put the heavy drug abuse and stuff behind me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, when we think about, and for me, it's always, I'm so curious about the person in front of me, always. Like, I want to know more about you, right? Because for you not only to have come out of that, and you did it on your own, but then you said never again. And then you realize that even when you were in it, you have what I call active listening, because the
Mm.
only reason this opened up to you and told you something that her husband doesn't even know is because you were there to listen. Had you interjected and started speaking and speaking and not letting her talk, you would never have known that, right? So it's a lot of people don't do what we do, which is active listening, to be interested in the person in front of you and what they're saying. That it's not something that everybody necessarily has, but it is something that everybody can definitely develop.
Absolutely.
You know, for me, it's just, I'm so darn curious, man.
Yeah.
I'm a people watcher. That's one. I
Yeah. Me
love
too.
watching people. I love their interactions. I sometimes watch people. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what sex they are, their religion. None of that matters.
Yeah.
I just want to see how they move. And here's the other crazy thing. I also look at animals, because
Mm.
they too move in peculiar ways. They too will react differently to different situations. So for me, I am, I guess, naturally attracted to movement, to ideas, to concepts. And when somebody's telling me their story, man, I sit back and I enjoy what it is that is going on with their life. And if I can share any knowledge,
Yeah.
not everybody wants to hear it either, right? So you have to know when people want to hear it. Some people go, you know what? I wanted an ear. I didn't want a mouthful, right? And some, as a coach, we need to learn that as well. Some coaches, all they want to do is talk, 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 talk,
Right.
and they don't listen to their clients. And I know, because I've had coaches like that. I'm like, wait a minute, I told you this. Meanwhile, you're not listening to what I'm saying. So
Right.
adios, sayonara, right? See you later. Because when we talk about being a coach or being somebody who just cares, right? It's not about you. It's about them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I shared the same curiosity as you. Now,
Mm,
obviously, as you said, this is a skill you can develop. And even though I had that natural curiosity, I'm a much better active listener today than I was even honestly 2 years ago, 3 years
mm,
ago, through some things that have happened in my life and going back, but I think just that sincere curiosity about someone's
mm,
story does really create, if I could even use this word, a level of intimacy in that communication that makes them feel safe and
mhm,
that they can share something with you, even if they're not really wanting to, hear anything in return, as you said. And as coaches, that's so critical. I almost laughed out loud when you talked about coaches that just talk, 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 talk. They talk, 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 talk. So they never actually hear anything about that person that matters, and then give
correct.
them assignments that they're not committed to, because it doesn't match where they're at and what, it's funny how that's not coaching to me.
No.
Coaching to me is more about asking a ton of great questions than it is anything else. I tell my clients all the time when we get started, if it's a one-on-one situation, is just simply, listen, you need to know this is all about you. As you said, your point, this is all about you. At the end of the day, my life is not going to change due to our interaction because I'm already on my path. But if I can help you, that's what we're going to do. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to decide what you're going to be willing to do and what you're not.
Yeah.
And so we're going to dig, we're going to uncover some things. But when we decide on an action item, it's because you're committed to it, not because I am,
Right.
But that all happens with, active listening and hearing people's stories. And, Sifo, I think one of the keys, I'd love to hear your take on this too, is for me over the years, the more stuff that I've been through, just the gut punches of life and the ups and the downs and things like that has made me even more compassionate. And I think I have even more empathy today than I did even a few years ago. And so, man, when you combine empathy and compassion with an active listening skill, it's a dynamic duo. And you're really positioned to really help a lot of people. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, speaking from personal experience, I was abused as a child. So I didn't know love. I thought I was, I was hated by everybody. The physical abuse, the mental abuse, all that stuff. And at 18 years old, I said, I'm done with this. And that's when my true compassion, I had compassion all along. I just didn't have it enough for me. Right. So once I said, you know what? I matter. I count. And all these people that abuse me, maybe they don't know what they're doing. And that's when I started thanking every one of them because they taught me how not to treat other people. They taught me how to be a better person. They taught me the value of life without intention. That was not their intention. Their intention was to hurt me.
Right.
So, and maybe it was their intention, or maybe they didn't know any better.
Right.
So where do we go from there? I could have become Denise, thank you for joining us as well. So I'm going to put Denise's, she talks about active listening, right? And is 100% key to helping individuals. Absolutely, Denise. So for me, thank you for being with us today. I appreciate you. For me, it was always, how do I find, I'm a hugger because of not being hugged or shown love as a child, right? It wasn't what my parents had in store. I'm number 10 of 12, so you can imagine.
Wow.
But that doesn't give an excuse. I'm not excusing them because they should have loved every kid or don't have it, right? So I could have been born into a different family. Who knows, right? Or not at all. So when I think about the opportunities that we have to change somebody's life because of our actions, the way we treat them with compassion, with love. Like I said, I'm a hugger. Next time, when I see you in person, buddy, I'm going to give you a big hug, right? Because I'm inviting you to New York because we're having a big event. It's called Heroes Rising Apex. And we are having amazing speakers, and possibly you'll be one as well, because I'm bringing all these people together to New York, people who are making a difference in the world. I'm having people from all over the world coming. I have people from Singapore, from South Africa, from Australia, from countries I can't even pronounce. They're coming, right? Everybody's excited to come and impart their knowledge with someone else because they're givers.
Yeah.
I love to associate with people who are not in it for what's in it for me, more of how can I be of help to you? How can I service? you in a way that will fulfill you and at the same time will fulfill me.
Yeah.
But most importantly, it's about you. So that's my short answer. You probably don't want to hear my long answer.
Yeah. we all have those. Yeah.
Yeah,
I try to avoid that as well.
Do me a favor, move to your right a little bit. Your right.
Actually, let me do this too. Maybe that
A little
help.
more.
Is that a little better?
Tiny little bit more. Beautiful. The reason is because I want to zoom in on you. Bam, there you are. Oh, I'm big. I'm too big. So let me do this. I got tricks up my sleeve. So there we go. So you changed your life. And in changing your life, I call that a transformation, right? You transformed from a drug user, a junkie, if you will, somebody who probably blacked out more times than you can probably remember.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So life was passing you by. But when you said no more, I am transforming. I am now going to be awake for my life. I'm going to be
right.
I'm going to be present, right? I think that alone speaks volumes because a lot of people, they may not be a drug user, but they are sleeping through their life. They're not chasing their dreams because they allow people to say, your dreams, no good. You need to go to work. You need to provide for your family, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. Your dreams are for later. But what if there is no later?
Right.
We don't know when we're going to die, do we?
Nope. We're not guaranteed anything. That's right.
So because of the beautiful transformation you made, you said your son is a first-degree black belt.
Mm.
And his teacher went into becoming a sifu, which means that his teacher also has gone through transformations as well.
Right.
And everybody who stays at the status quo will never transform. So it's people who are always seeking more, who are seeking knowledge. So here's a quote that I posted something today, right? And I put, I didn't come to this world to be average.
Right.
I came to make a difference, right? I was born average, right? You and I were both born average, but it's our actions that elevate us, that put us at that level of where we can change. Listen, for me, maybe I don't change the whole world. How about if I change one?
Yeah.
How about if I change one person's life, one person's world? So it's important for us. Denise, thank you for being here. Once again, powerful to those who didn't have good intentions, right? I feel so blessed to be exposed to this dialogue. It is lifting my spirits today. Denise, thank you for being here with us.
Right? Yeah, thank you, Denise. Hello.
Yes, and howdy, right? And that's what my good friend Dana said, howdy. Wow. I am blessed to know amazing individuals. I am blessed that you and I have this connection now, and a connection that we will have forever, because I will make sure, and I know you will too, that we stay connected, that we do things to impact our world. When we think about the changes, your life, you have a beautiful son. You would not be able to give this child the correct upbringing that for him to become a first-degree black belt had you still been on drugs, right? What would he be had you not transformed?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't even know if he would exist, because
he might have. Listen, people on drugs still have kids, right?
Yeah,
they have drug babies, right?
No, that's absolutely true. I just think back the marriage that I was in during that time, we ended up divorcing about a year after the experience that I had where I was done with drugs. And,
Right.
right around that same time, this is important to bring into my story as well, is, up to that point, I didn't really have much of a compass either in terms of just spiritually. And so right around the age of 31, so this is about a year after I decided to quit using meth, period, is when I accepted an invitation to go to a church because of some people I knew that, there was just something about their life. They seemed to have the ability to have their peace even when things were not going their way. I'll just say it that way.
Right.
And so I ended up going to church one day just because I was curious to watch them. I mean, it's seriously, I wasn't looking for faith. I wasn't looking for God. But ultimately that day, I ended up deciding to have a relationship with God. And so that's when my faith journey began, which has definitely been hugely foundational through the different bumps and bruises and things in life as well. And so, we did not have children in that first marriage. And part of my journey, and if I could back up one second, you said something I thought was so powerful. When you're talking about even the martial arts, one of the things I love about the martial arts is you never arrive, right? You never arrive. I know our Sifu here, it took him 10 years to get this red sash. And yet one of the main things he taught us that day when we were at his ceremony he said, this is the beginning. For most of it's like, we're like 10 years. Oh my gosh. Finally. He's like, no, I'm just now to a point where I'm truly beginning, And I think that's beautiful because that's our personal journey.
Right.
There's a lot of talk about destiny. I'm okay with it. I mean, it's a term that you can use, but man, if we just focused on the journey, how much would we change, And so I want to point that out. I think saying that is really, really important. We need to recognize that we're on a journey and that we're never finished, that we're either growing or we're staying static. And if we're staying static, that doesn't last long before we're regressing, right? So really, there's only two options, moving forward or moving backwards.
Right.
So after that divorce, I made the decision that I just really felt like I was going to get another opportunity to become a husband. And that at some point I was going to have an opportunity to have children.
Beautiful.
And so I spent Sifu the next 2.5 years at least reading and studying everything I could find to develop myself personally, to read about what does a healthy husband look like? What does a healthy marriage look like? Because even though my parents, they ended up reconciling after that whole crazy experience I described earlier in our conversation, and they ended up married for 65 years. By the time they both passed away about 8 years ago, about 6 months apart from each other.
Wow. Incredible.
But the characteristics of their marriage were not necessarily great. Their communication skills weren't great. There was just elements of their marriage that wasn't great. So, I felt like I needed to learn this stuff. I think a lot like you, I'm just so blown away by your story because I didn't know that part of it. And, again, I would commend you just for you to have that switch flip and make the decision that I heard you say grateful. And gratitude is a powerful force. You became grateful that not what happened to you, but it made you see some things that you knew you didn't want in your life. And so you use that as a catalyst,
Right.
And so that's kind of what happened to me in the sense of getting meth out of my life. And then when that divorce ended in utter failure, I suffered shame. I suffered, all the things that go along with the divorce that you feel lesser than, you feel like you should, what should I have done different? All that stuff. So I used that as a catalyst. So by the time I met my bride now, we've been married almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years in April.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you. And with my sons, I have two sons on this side of eternity and one who's in heaven, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about him a little later.
Yes, definitely.
But when I think about to your question of, what would I have been like back then with my sons, it would be a completely different life. I mean, had I actually had them in that state I was in, and I would again say not just drug use, but all of the faulty mindsets and just polluted ways of thinking about how to respond to the bumps and bruises of life. There's no way he would be where he is today.
Right.
there's just no way, and could he have, and my middle son, could they have circumvented that once they were out of our house, and like you and like I did, changed their life? Absolutely. But it would have had nothing to do with me.
Mhm. You know, when we think about intentions, my ex-wife, I wouldn't marry her
Hmm.
until she decided it was the right time to have a baby. And then I planned it. Once she decided, because I was going to leave her because I wanted kids. I'm number 10 of 12. Hello? I need kids in my life.
Yeah.
So if it was up to me, I would have had 20, but it wasn't up to me, right? So when she finally, it took 7 years, and I was like, you know what? I need to
Wow.
find somebody else. So she finally said, you know what? I think I now want kids. And I said, great. Let's set a date to get married, but it has to work around your cycle. I was crazy because I wanted kids. I planned our honeymoon. I was with the travel agent say, no, this date doesn't work. No, this is her cycle. And the
Wow.
first time she heard this, she's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm planning my child on my honeymoon. And it happened.
Wow.
It happened. So my intention was to have this beautiful person come into our lives. And this kid is just an incredible. And when he was little, everybody said, my God, we all think our babies are beautiful.
Of
I've never
course.
seen a parent who goes, my kid's ugly, right? Imagine you go into a room and you go, everybody who's a parent, raise your hand. Okay. Now everybody raise your hand, keep your hand up if your kids are ugly.
Right.
How many parents are going to keep their hands up, right? So practically nobody, unless that kid has angered the parent that day, right? But what a lot of people said to me is that your son, he's an old soul.
Hmm.
He's a deep thinker. You can see that from just his actions. And it may have been not me, not her, but it is what, and you believe in God and I believe in God. It's what God brought into our lives to not only help her along, but to help me along as well. Because
Yeah.
my intention was to have this beautiful child, and I did. I have 2 boys. I'm blessed, right? But for me, my intention was not just to be a dad and say, yeah, I donated my sperm. That's it.
Right.
No, I was an extremely active parent, more than she was. So if we went to a party or a gathering, I was the one changing the diapers. I was the one tending to the baby. And I would go, no, you go socialize. You go, I got the baby. Because I was loving every second. But when we think about the intentions of our life, who do we want in our lives? Who do we associate with? Where do we go? So I do want to talk about the guitars behind you,
Hmm.
because I know they're going to touch upon something, and I'm going to blow up the screen a little bit so we can go into and when you told me this, it was it really touched me, because I told you that I want to learn to play guitar. And I was admiring the guitars behind you.
Yeah.
And I did not expect what came out of your mouth next. So I still admire the guitars behind you, but tell me about them.
Yeah. Well, they're beautiful, right? I mean,
Oh, they're gorgeous.
right now they're decor, and they're pretty beautiful decor, but
And I asked you if you knew how to play them.
I know. And so that's the embarrassing part about this. Everybody that has me on either a Zoom call or any kind of an interview sees them, of course, and they're always like, "Are you a rock star?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, I'm not
Yes, you are.
that cool. At least not that kind of cool, right?" But the red one, which is a Les Paul, was a very interesting event in my life. I mentioned earlier that I was a pastor for 17 years, and so did a lot of speaking and things like that. And there was one morning where I had spoke, And a gentleman approached me it was after I was done. I kind of walked to my seat, which was along the front, and everything was ending. The guy came up to me, and he was this like biker looking dude. I mean, he had the whole gear, he drove a Harley. He had the Hells Angels kind of vest. He had the tattoos. He had the long hair. I mean, he had the like complete look, right?
Right.
And he's like weeping. And I'm like, hey, and he goes, I just want to introduce myself. My name's Mike. And I'm like, what's going on? He says, listen, when you spoke 2 months ago. So already it was kind of funny because I was thinking, oh, this guy's responding to what I just said. And it wasn't at all. He's like, but he had been at a different talk I'd done. And he said, you had said, and I don't even remember, what it was that impacted him, but he just said, it's changed my life. And there's something that I need to do. He said, I really feel like God is telling me I need to give you this. And he wasn't holding anything in his hand. So he turns around, and in the seat behind him, because he had laid it down, I didn't even notice, was this, big hard case, a guitar hard case. And it had all these like roadie stickers on it. It was actually the case I have. I could pull it out. I mean, it's really cool looking.
Right.
And so he grabs that and he comes over with it, and he opens it, and he pulls out this beautiful Les Paul. And he said, I'm supposed to give you this.
Huh.
And I was just blown away, up to that particular stage of my life and speaking in front of people. And I've had people want to give me things, but nothing quite like that. Right. And the emotion on him was just so deep. And so I tried to talk him out of it for a minute or two, because I just felt like it was just too much, but he was very adamant and made it very clear that, no, this is something he absolutely had to do, and that there was actually something in it for him. Like he really felt like in doing this act, he was going to get even more of what he felt like God was trying to show him. So I received it. So that's how I ended up in possession of the guitar.
Wow.
And for a number of years, it mostly just stayed in a case. And every now and then, if I, wanted to tell the story or whatever, I would break it out. But years later, my oldest son, Gabriel, so at that point he was 15, 16, maybe. The funniest thing happened. My wife and I were in our living room, and, our house isn't small, but it's not a mansion either. Right. But we're on the other side of the house from where his room was, which is actually where I am now. And all of a sudden I hear, and I wish I could remember, Sifu, I wish I could remember the actual song, because I'm kind of an 80s rock kind of guy. But I heard this 80s rock riff, like Stairway to Heaven or something, Leonard Skinner. I don't know what it was, but I hear it. And I turned to her and I'm like, did you hear that? And she was, I did. That sounded live. I'm like, it did. So we go run into his bedroom, open the door, and he's got the Les Paul. He's sitting on the bed, and he's doing this riff, and he's doing it really well. And we're like, when did you learn to play guitar? We had no idea that he'd even been trying, And so anyway, it was Gabriel who started playing it. And so it was just really cool. He said it was YouTube videos, by the way. So
nice.
Amazing, the world we live in today, right? He started watching YouTube videos, and that also speaks to his personality too, because he was one of those people that when he wanted to do something, there was no barrier. He was going to find a way, and it was going to happen, So Gabriel played it, and, we may get into his story here shortly. He passed away and in a tragic situation. And so, after that, he had actually already begun to display these guitars. And so that was one thing I left in this room. It's been a little bit about 3.5 years ago. So we've made some changes in here. We've been very intentional not to make it like a shrine or anything like that. But there's just a couple.
I want to say I'm sorry for your loss, because that's so tragic.
Yes,
but I know that he's still with you.
He is. And that's one of the ways, I mean, when you lose a child, you don't need triggers. I think about him multiple times every single day, but certainly when I look at the guitar, it puts a smile on my face, because I just remember, watching him do it and being so impressed, and thinking what a wuss I was that I never learned how to do it.
I got to tell you, when somebody loses a child, it's beyond devastating.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's where the faith really, really comes in, because a lot of people will always say, if God does have love for us, why does he take people's children away? Why
Right.
doesn't he take the bad people away? Right?
Right. Right.
But there's a reason for everything, and I don't know the reason, and I wish I can give you a big hug right now. I lost my sister.
Hmm.
There's a picture of her and I holding hands, and from what I gather, I must have been three, maybe 3.5 when she went, maybe 3 when she passed. She was a year older than me. But what I gather from my family is that she and I held hands everywhere, everywhere. And I think the reason I'm alive today is because she's always been with me.
Wow.
I consider her my guardian angel. I mean, literally, I've almost died several times. I've been in a coma. I've been a lot of different things. And I think that she is my guardian angel. I
That's
truly
beautiful.
believe it.
Yeah.
And, when we have an amazing human being touch our lives, and then they're no longer with us, but they are, right?
Yeah.
So your son
Yeah.
is still with you.
Yeah.
And even if you got rid of the guitar, you would still have him. He's in your heart and your mind and your
Yeah.
soul, right? So I just want to, let you know that I care what you're going through. And if anything, you ever
Thank
want to
you.
talk, you got my number. You can call me
Yeah.
anytime, man.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Yeah. It's a devastating experience.
Hmm.
I'm going to delve into that a little bit,
Yeah, please
but I
do.
want to back up just a hair, because I think it's so important with, where we have been in this last 3.5 years, the place we are at mentally, emotionally, and spiritually when this tragedy happened and all that. So as
Hmm.
I mentioned, when I was 31 is when I gave my life to God. And so it was a few years later, after my divorce, after studying, how to be a good husband, all that stuff, that my bride and I came together. And so, over the course of our marriage, which is just under 20 years,
Hmm.
we went through a miscarriage together. And that's not a good thing.
No.
None of the things we're going to talk about are good things. But out of that, I do believe that there was something within that drew us closer together, and there was an intimacy of us having to go through that
Mhm.
together. There's something about hard times when you love another person and you have that deep bond and you go through it together. There's just something about that even deepens the
Mm.
intimacy. So at the very least, that happened.
Right.
And then, Gabriel was born at 3 pounds, 12 ounces, a couple of months early.
Mm.
So she had a pregnancy disease called preeclampsia. So they had to take him early because she was her blood pressure just skyrocketed, and they were going to have to take him. Otherwise they were both going to be in danger.
Right.
Then we went, so there was that situation for her. And then when we actually went to have our second child, that's when we had the miscarriage. Then
Mm.
shortly after, we had our middle son, Joel, who went full term. And so, we're thinking life is good.
Right.
She has him. She was stuck at a 2 for 12 hours. So they mercilessly finally just said, we're just going to have to do a C-section again. So I'm thinking, you can put yourself there, how much you love kids too. I'm in the
Mm.
room with my son, Joel, and the nurse is cleaning him up, and I'm going through that whole experience. And it's just like, this is amazing. It was awesome. And then all of a sudden they come in, and the medical staff, they do a good job of acting professional and not trying to
Mhm.
show their hand, but they pulled me back into the waiting room that she was in because she wasn't coming out of the anesthesia.
Mm.
And that went on for some time. And so they
Wow.
were asking me to help try to keep her awake and talk to her. And
Mm.
it was scary. It was
Oh,
really
yeah.
scary, so we
I
went
can
through
only
that.
imagine. Yeah.
So that was, another little thing that we went through. And then when we had Liam, this is going to sound funny now, but you said there are no parent thinks any child is ugly. There is an exception.
When they're born.
And
Yes.
that is, he was born. She actually ended up sick again during the
Mm.
pregnancy. And at 6 months, went into full-blown HELP syndrome, which is basically when preeclampsia goes to another level
Mm.
and your major organs start shutting down.
Ooh.
So he was born 3 months early at 1 pound, 14 ounces.
Oh my gosh.
So when he came out, he literally looked like this little alien. It's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Right.
actually very scary. So we went through that whole season as well. And then just, the normal stuff in life, if I could say it that way. She suffered a
Right.
severe spiral fracture of her femur out on a
Mm.
remote lake during another season of our life. And
Mm.
that's a whole other crazy story. And,
Oof.
she
Yeah.
survived that. Fortunately, her arteries weren't severed by the bones. It's just crazy deal. So we've been
Mm.
through stuff.
Right. Right.
And in each and every one of those situations, there was always a lesson. There was always something good that God brought
Mm.
out of it.
Mhm.
So we had that as part of our foundation. For us, that wasn't just this religious thing. It was just the pattern we saw in our life, that no matter what harm or bad things came our way, that somewhere in it,
Mhm.
God was going to turn something good out of it.
Yeah.
And so that was our life. And then fast forward, Gabriel, who I already talked about a little bit with the guitar, he was a force of nature. He was one of those
Mm.
kids that had strong communication skills at a very young age. At 8 years old, flew in a small plane with his uncle Danny
Mm.
and came out of that. He's like, I want to be a pilot, and we're just, oh, that's great. We're glad you had a great time, thinking next week you're going to want to be a fireman or,
Right.
a
Right.
CEO or something. But he didn't. He hung on to it. It was just like,
Mm.
no, I'm going to fly planes. So by the time he was 14, he actually had the opportunity to first get in a 4-year aviation program in the high school that we have here, which is not typical. We felt like
Not
that
in the
was
high school.
no.
Right.
There's only a couple of districts that I know of today, anyway, that even have a 4-year aviation program, an educational
Mm.
component. And
Mhm.
so we felt like that was the favor of God when we moved here, because we had just
Mm.
moved back from Washington State when all these opportunities for him to fly began to just come seemingly out of nowhere.
Right.
During that time, his freshman year, also, he joined a club called Tango 31 Aero Club, which in short is this beautiful nonprofit that was put together by a guy named Kevin Lacey. He's kind of an old, salty pilot. He probably won't like me saying that, but he's just this salty old, some listeners may actually recognize that name because he
Mm.
was the star of the show Airplane Repo, which was on at least Discovery
Mm.
Channel. I can't remember what else.
Got it.
So this is a guy who literally repos Learjets
Airplanes?
and yeah,
Wow.
and every kind you can possibly think of,
I can
from
imagine.
little things to the ones in Alaska that I can't think of the name right now, but the ones that you land on the water, to a Learjet, So he started this club for kids so that they wouldn't have to work so hard or maybe never achieve their dream of becoming a pilot because of finances.
Right.
And so ultimately, you get an opportunity to fly through that club through sweat equity. So for a couple of years, until he was like 14 to 16, he had to work his butt off. And they worked on engines, they did oil changes, they painted,
Mm.
they put together, entire aircraft that got brought in. It was really
Wow.
an amazing thing. So he's living this dream, Sifu,
Mm.
and we're under the favor of God. There was no other way to see it. He literally, by the time he got his license at 17, which he achieved,
Mm.
we only put out of pocket $300+ for the exam. He had
Wow.
earned $1,000 scholarship his freshman year, and it paid for everything because Kevin had free flight instructors and wholesale
Mm.
fuel and all this stuff. So
Huh.
everything was just screaming favor, 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 favor. This is really important for where I'm about to go. So things are good. September 23rd, 2019. By now, he's about 3 months shy of his 18th birthday. At that stage, it's all about the hours. Every
Mhm.
pilot, doesn't matter what age they are, any new pilot is just wanting to gain hours. So he had a friend that was attending the University of Arkansas, was here in McKinney, Texas, where we live just outside of Dallas. Over the weekend, he flies her up there. And then on his return trip, he got about 20 minutes out of Fayetteville, Arkansas. And what we know now, the NTSB did an investigation like they do all plane crashes. and ruled that he suffered from spatial disorientation. A unexpected weather system came through a little mountainous region he was flying over, and he lost his way. Same thing that happened to the Kobe Bryant pilot. So some of your listeners, or most of our listeners, should be aware of that.
Right.
And he lost his life chasing his dream. Living his dream really is the better way to say it. So devastating blow, life-changing blow. Our lives will never be the same. One of the things that I talk about, I wrote a book that we may talk about later, but in the book and what I talk to other people about often is there's no such thing as moving on from losing a child. You don't move on. Now you can learn how to move forward with your life. And I suggest to you that you must, but you don't move on. So he left this gaping hole. And to your, question earlier, where we talk about, how do you respond to these things? How do you not want to blame God? You didn't say this, but how do you not want to blame God?
Well, I did say that.
Or did you say that? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. So you did say that. And that's, a very legitimate question, and one that anybody that is faced with this kind of a life-changing tragedy will ask themselves. No question about it. But the reason why I took the long road to get to this story is we had seen a pattern over the course of a lifetime of circumstances we never would have chosen. And somehow good eventually evolving from that. And so what happened was that very first morning, we were faced with a decision. And this is what I believe was paramount to the posture that we have taken. And it has allowed us to recalibrate over and over and over when we have been challenged with the loss and the pain and all the things that come with losing your own dreams. We had dreams for his life, vanished into thin air. All those things are never going to materialize on this side. So that morning I was faced with telling my two sons, other sons, who at that time were 9 and 14, what had happened. They had slept through the night. I won't take everybody through the long, grueling experience we had that night. It was about 8-9 hours long from the time we knew he had disappeared to getting the official word from the coroner that he was indeed gone. So the boys came out and we sat down, and I, of course, let them know what happened. Honestly, Sifu, I don't remember what how I said he passed away. I don't remember that. It's a blur. And they responded the way you would imagine. There was a lot of wailing and tears and, screaming. And it was a nightmare. But at some point, once our emotions leveled out a little bit, I really felt like God had given me not a formula, but I just keep using the word compass. He gave me a compass to talk to them and say, this is how we're going to start. And so I said, boys, I've seen a lot. My 17, I didn't say exactly this way, but my 17 years of pastoring, helping a lot of people through things similar to this, losing, and then seeing the marriages implode, and then seeing the families implode due to tragedies. I said, we have two choices. We can choose to allow this tragedy to become our identity. We can be so focused on the death, the tragedy of the death, that it's a plane crash, that all the things that we're going to miss now, all the birthdays, the holidays, the marriage, the kids, the, fill in the blank, all of those experiences. If that becomes our identity, then we are going to be locked into this tragedy, and we are going to be shadows of who we are created to be. But there's a second choice. And that second choice is we're going to choose life. And what that means is we are going to choose to live the way your brother lived. He attacked life. I love to joke nowadays that, everybody loves t-shirts with, I got my Big Bold Brave logo right here, with sayings on it, right? I mean, people make millions of dollars with the right shirt that says the right thing. If I had one that identified who he was, it would be what's next, because that's what he was all about. Life was an adventure. See, everything was an adventure. The guitars, he taught himself photography. And I have,
Wow.
you can't see all the way around here, but we have some amazing photographs of some of the stuff that he took.
Mm.
So there was just nothing that was ever going to hold him back from achieving and living his dreams.
Yeah. That's
So we
beautiful.
talked about that. We talked about that for a minute. And I said, that's what we're going to do. We're going to live life like Gabriel did. And so we're going to choose instead to honor his life
Mm.
rather than get trapped in his
That's
death.
beautiful, man. I got to tell you, that's beautiful.
It was huge. Now, people listening right now, especially if you have suffered something like that, I need to make this very clear. That is not something that removes pain. I'm not
Mm.
talking about that. We still suffer pain, and we will for the rest of our lives. I've said this many times. It's not even a goal for us to eliminate the pain of his loss, because that pain represents the great love we shared and
Mm.
who he was to us in our lives. So, and this, anything in life, there's pain involved in everything. You want to get in shape, there's pain involved. Now, poor comparison, but
Yes.
pain can become a catalyst, right? And so that's the decision we made,
Mm.
and it has really helped us, even though we still suffer from the pain, and there's times where it's if I could say, it affects us emotionally differently at different times.
Mm.
And that was part two. If I could share that really quickly too. Part two of that conversation is we didn't know what grieving was going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told him, I said, listen,
Nobody does.
nobody
Nobody
knows,
knows.
even though
It's
I've
it's an
helped people,
individual experience.
it completely, and so I had that understanding. So I think that was an advantage to that degree. I had an
Mm.
understanding of all the wrong places where pain could take us.
Mm.
And so I just told them, I said, we're going to grieve together. And I don't care if you're pissed off and angry. I don't care if you're sad and you want to cry. I don't care if you feel like you don't want to get out of bed that day. Doesn't matter what any one of us is going to experience at any given moment during this journey that we're on, this new part of our journey.
Right.
It's okay, but we're going to do it as a family. And what's not okay is to do it alone. So we made a commitment. And that was, and Sifu, this is really important to point out. They were 9 and 14.
Mm-hmm.
This was not a commitment where we told them, okay, you guys need to come talk to us, or you need to be free with your emotions whenever they hit. And it's going to be okay. And we're going to let you, and we're not going to, try to hold you if you're crying and tell you, stop, stop, stop. It's going to be okay. We're going to let you experience that. But I'm the man of the house. I'm the tough guy here. So you're not going to see me do that. I'm going to go behind closed doors, and I'm going to hide those emotions from you guys, because I need to look like I'm in charge, and I need to look like I can carry the weight of this family. And that wasn't it. It was a two-way street. And we've held true to that. We've held true
I
to
think
that.
that's what made you guys stronger as a family, if I'm listening correctly.
Yeah.
Because had you and your wife gone on your own and grieved alone, it may have not made you guys I can only tell that you guys are a strong family, and
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Absolutely.
There's no question, that's been a huge part of it, because again, the pain is still there.
Oh yeah.
And life hasn't been perfect since that happened. We've had more punches in the gut and things that have happened over the course of that time. 2 years after Gabriel passed, this is a little over a year ago, my middle son, Joel, who by then was driving, hit a median on one of our major highways here in Dallas at 75 miles an hour. And it flipped his car 5 times, and he should have died.
Wow.
Everybody on the scene, the EMTs, the police, they couldn't believe he not only walked out of it, but he only had a little scratch. His car was completely destroyed. If you saw the picture, you would go, they didn't walk away from that. So we were grateful, clearly, that
It
he
was
walked
probably
away from that.
Gabriel holding him on.
Well, there's an interesting
That's how I see
story.
it,
We could go a very interesting way with that right there.
but that's my thought. It's
yeah.
Gabriel came into your lives to show you. This is what I'm gathering, and tell me if I'm wrong or right. And maybe there is no wrong or right, but I'm gathering that Gabriel came into your lives to teach you how to live, and then he left to let you live, and therefore he protected your other son
Yeah.
during that time. That's I see Gabriel as the angel to you guys.
And he is, and
Mm,
I think to your point there, I think things are always bigger and greater than we can surmise, than we can come up with. So I'm
mhm,
sure it's greater than even what you just said, but that's very true. What you
mm,
just said, he changed my life and
mhm,
even the trajectory of it in many ways. And I am going to share this really fast. A very fascinating thing happened that, this happened very late at night. So we didn't even see the car that night. I actually went and picked him up with the EMTs and the police who were actually at a location close to where actually the actual wreck was. So
mm,
I didn't see the car until the next day. We were driving out to go see the car at the wrecking yard, and Joel made the comment that I really think Gabriel was with me.
mm.
And I don't know how that works, but I really feel like he was with me. And so, you're always trying to recognize, and we don't need to go off into the weeds with this
Right,
topic,
right,
but
right.
what does that look like, with heaven and earth and what's going on around us that we can't even see, all those things. And so we just had a conversation on the way out. We're kind of like, okay, well, maybe he did, maybe he was, and we just
Mhm,
don't know what that looks like. Well, we get to the car, and again, it was incredible to see it. We wept. All of
mm,
us wept when we actually saw the car because he shouldn't have walked away from it.
right,
And I'm doing a little walk around because we're just there to see if there was any belongings left in the car that we need to pull because the car was
right,
completely
gone,
totaled.
right.
And I opened it. Now, interestingly enough, he did have a passenger with him, and he walked away without a scratch either.
Mm,
His side of the car was much more intact. Joel's side was completely collapsed.
mm.
I opened the door, and there was a cross that Gabriel, he had a cross necklace, this stainless steel cross necklace. He wore it everywhere he went. He never took it off. He didn't take it off to shower. He didn't take it off to go swimming. He didn't take it off for anything. And oddly enough, the night of his wreck, of his crash, we don't even know why and even when he did it. But he was staying the night with two of his dear friends that he flew with that
Mm,
lived at that airport. There's a lot of people that actually live on the airport.
mm,
And a couple of days after his crash, they brought his car home to us so we wouldn't have to go pick it up.
mm.
And he reaches into his pocket. His name is Alex. He reaches into his pocket and he goes, "Oh, by the way," he goes, "it's been a couple of days. I don't know how we missed it, but this was on our counter this morning." And he
Wow,
drops into my hand this necklace.
wow,
So Joel took that necklace. His brother
mm,
was his best friend at that point. So it
right.
was, it was something that held him close. Well, fast forward to this wreck 2 years later, Joel couldn't wear the necklace because he constantly broke necklaces. so he had put this little cross in his sunglass holder
Mm,
above the windshield.
right.
I open the car door on the passenger side, and the cross is sitting in the passenger seat.
Mm,
I'll let whoever's watching this, listening to this, do with that what you want.
oh, yeah,
But for us, that was a clear symbol that even though we don't know quite how that works,
right.
but he was without question with Joel.
Oh, yeah. I,
And
I
so,
told you even before you told me about this
yeah,
story. Didn't
yeah,
I feel it? I felt
yeah,
it. Man.
yeah. Yeah, and what you just said was very dangerous to say, right?
Not for me.
Because people,
Not for
I'm
me.
just saying, but only because you don't know how someone's going to react to that. But I love that you said that, and thank you for having I would call that courageous, the courage to even suggest that to me,
Mhm.
because it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
You
you.
know, if we're afraid to say what's in our heart, then why even speak at all?
Yeah, that's so
You
good.
know,
That's good.
listen, I got to tell you, this has been an incredible conversation, an incredible journey that you took us on. I want to thank you for today.
Yeah, you're
You
welcome.
definitely have impacted my life and everybody listening. And I know that you are doing something incredible, and that's why your website is bigboldbrave.us, and I have it up there. But I also have something running across that says block your calendar, July 13th through the 16th, because I want you in New York. We're having an incredible event called Heroes Rising Apex, and where we're bringing coaches from all over the world. And I definitely want you there. I'm going to send you some information on it as
Sounds
well.
good.
I'll send you a speaker questionnaire and all that stuff. What's one thing that you would say you have, and of course I've been taking notes, you could tell, right? That has impacted your life from when you were a little boy till even this morning? One thing.
Well, for me, the biggest impact is definitely these last 3.5 years of my life. And that was that what Gabriel taught me and is teaching me
Mm,
is that I had pockets of my life where I lived in cowardice. I was a coward.
mm.
I actually mentioned that in my book. I called myself a coward. And as you know, those are fighting words, especially for men.
Oh yeah.
We don't like to be called cowards, but that's what he showed me, because there were areas that I was not fully living out who I was created to be. There were risks that I hadn't been willing to take. One was writing a book. I'd known that I was going to write a book for years,
Mm,
never had the courage to put pen to paper. I knew that I wanted to make a shift and get into the personal development space rather than only be a pastor, which is a very wonderful vocation. But I knew I wanted to make that shift, didn't have the courage to do it. So I could go on about a few different things that I felt like I lacked courage.
you know what I
He
think
taught
you and
me.
I need to do?
Mm.
You need to come back. We have so much untapped stories that we
There's
have
a
to
lot of
do.
layers.
Uh,
Yeah.
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 I love the fact that you're an onion and we've only peeled the top layer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think you also need to come on my Heroes Rising show, which I do twice a month, I'm sorry. And you have not only did Gabriel help guide you in these 3.5 years of becoming a stronger person,
Mhm.
becoming even a better dad than you probably were before. I'm sure
Sure.
you were a great dad to
No.
Gabriel, but even understanding that your two other boys needed you, especially when
Yeah.
Gabriel left you guys. But and the more I think about it, the more I think that people come into our lives for a season, however long that season is. And if we allow them, they will guide us. They will teach us the lessons, including, listen,
Yeah.
I talked about how grateful I was for the people who hurt me because they were put into my life to teach me, to guide me, right? Even when they were hurting me,
Mm.
they were helping me.
Yeah.
You know?
That's so good. This is my parting shot if you give me just a second here.
Of course.
The other thing about, not just for me personally and revealing the cowardice, but I'll tell you another thing that this kind of a death can do and why it's been such a positive trajectory, which sounds counterintuitive,
Mm,
is my empathy and my compassion for people after suffering this loss has really escalated. And I think that's important, because what everybody needs to understand is, as you said very early in this conversation, none of us are guaranteed anything. We don't even know if after this call, if you and I are still going to be around. We're not guaranteed it. But usually we respond to something like this one of two ways. We allow the pain to cause us to love less.
mm.
We shrink back into ourselves. We don't want to risk the
Getting hurt again.
relationships
Yep.
and getting hurt again. And that comes in a lot of different forms, right? And we love less.
Mm,
Or we can allow a circumstance like this to allow our love and the expression of that love to go to a whole new level and it really be the driving value of our life. And I really feel like that's ultimately what is happening in our life.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, let's touch upon we'll take another 5 minutes or so, and we'll touch upon your book, why you wrote your book, and then I'm going to want a signed copy, right?
That's right. I am. It's on its way already. I've been working on it off to the side.
All right,
Um,
cool. So
what
tell
I
me what possessed you, and you talked about courage, right? The courage to write the book.
yeah.
It's funny, this morning I wrote the name of a book that I'm going to be writing. I've written so many books, but I haven't published any.
Wow.
But and then I think I'm going to, probably towards the middle or end of this year, I'm probably going to put a bunch of them out
Come on.
at once and see which one really hits. Hopefully they
Come
all
on.
hit. Or if none hit, here's my idea. It'll be my legacy for my children, my great
Yeah.
grandchildren. So they'll say, "Hey, did you read Grandpa's book or great grandpa's
It's
book?"
awesome.
So
Yeah.
that's why I think we all need to write a book. And even if it doesn't get published, even if you just write it and leave it in
Yeah.
your will to be passed down and down, so people can know about what you went through, right?
Yeah. That's
But
so
go ahead,
good.
tell us about your book.
That was so good right there. Oh my gosh. And that was in my thought process,
Mm,
as I wrote the book. But in short, I could have waited longer to write this book if it was only a book about me suffering the loss of my son.
mm,
But as most of your listeners have probably figured out by now, he died 2019, at the end of 2019. So it was only a few months later that COVID hit the world, and the pandemic, of course, changed our world. And there has been extreme loss in so many different ways across the globe. Yes, losing loved ones, but also losing businesses and marriages, divorce going up, suicide, depression, just fill in the blanks, right? And I believe that the majority of the reason for that is just all the overwhelming fear
mm,
that has been released through, and this is not a political statement. Doesn't matter which side you are on any of the arguments involving the pandemic itself. I've met
mhm,
very few people that would argue that fear has been released all over the planet in
mhm.
ways that we've never experienced before. And
Right.
a lot of that just has to do with consumable media, right? We can get bad news every 5 seconds if we want to, because it's right here in our hand.
Yes.
But I say that to say that's the reason why I wrote the book when I did, is just because the world has suffered loss, and so many people are now shrinking back in fear and not chasing their dreams because they feel like there's maybe nothing to live for, or that,
Mm,
at this point, I'm just going to try to stay safe inside my little, abode here and try not to let the world touch me, whatever the reasons are. So this book is really more about not just how to, in a healthier way, move forward through painful situations in life, but also to see the lessons in life along the way and learn how to use, like I talk a lot about how to maintain your peace in different circumstances, talk about giving your pain a purpose. There's just so much in the book about how to live.
right.
It's a book about living
Mm,
and becoming courageous and not spending the rest of your life in a mundane career that you hate
right.
and never willing to start a side gig or do that thing you've really wanted to do or take that trip you've always wanted to go on.
Mhm.
It's really about that, Sifu. It's about living.
Yeah, that's awesome. And look, Denise has been with us, and she says, "Wow, the book comment was touching." And then, of course, here she is. Thank you for the comments, by the way. They're great. People come into our lives for a reason, in a season or a lifetime. Yes, and amen to that for sure. Your story is so touching, but if you don't tell that story, and it may bring up emotions in you every time you tell it, and it should,
Yeah.
because you loved your son, and you still do, right? So loved and still do, to me, are the same thing, because
Yeah.
you can love someone or you can be in love with someone, right? So I love my children, and no matter, even if they turn around and say, "We never want to see you again, Dad,"
Mhm.
I would still never lose that love for them,
Absolutely.
right? But thank you for sharing your story, because your story is going to help someone who may have lost someone.
Yeah.
Really quick, I've had the opportunity to say goodbye to people before they died. One being my brother. He was 42 years old. He knew he had two weeks to live. We were able to share that time with him. And then the other one was my mom. It was my intuition to go see her a week before she died.
Wow.
I spent a whole week with her, and it was a beautiful time. And it was like, wow, something told me, you have to go see your mom. You have no choice. You have to go make it happen. And I did. But we don't always get that opportunity to say our goodbyes, right?
Yeah.
And like you didn't get that opportunity. But we will get that opportunity to say hello again.
Yeah.
At another time, when the time is right. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
for having
all
me.
that you're doing, and for sharing, and for, man, for all you're doing for other people, for helping other people get through some of the tough challenges that, listen, life is not easy. You know it. So many people know it. Denise knows it. Anybody who I know knows it. Listen, unless you're in a bubble. Remember that movie with John Travolta? He was the boy in the
Yeah.
bubble,
Yeah.
right? Even then, there was suffering, right? So you cannot put anyone in a bubble and protect them. Especially, I'm talking to helicopter parents. Let your kids fall down. It's
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
right? So, thank you so much for being with me today. Do me a favor. We're going to say goodbye to everybody, but I want you to stick around for a minute or two. All right,
Sounds good. Thank you for having me.
everybody. What do we want you to do today? We want you to have an exceptional day and reach out. Yesterday was Valentine's Day. Did you love yourself too? Right?
So good.
Yeah. You have to love yourself before. Listen, it's the old airplane wisdom. Put the oxygen mask on you before you do it to anybody else. Love yourself so that you can have more love for others, right? All right, my friend. Thank you so much. Have an amazing rest of your day.
You as well.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.